Hi, I'm Yaakov Katz, and welcome to another episode of the Jewish People's Podcast by JPPI. Is Israel truly isolated on the world stage, or is that just the narrative its critics want us to believe? Today, I'm joined by Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister Sharren Haskel for a wide-ranging and passionate conversation about the war in Gaza and the international backlash that only seems to be increasing. Haskel pushes back against the mounting accusations of Israeli war crimes. She insists that the Jewish state still has strong allies across the globe, of course, most prominently, the Trump administration in the United States. And also she lays out why the IDF must continue its fight against Hamas, even when much of the world doesn't seem to understand why and for what purpose. We spoke about the day after plan for Gaza, the surge in global anti-Semitism, and why it is so hard for Israel to explain itself and get its message out on mainstream media. Sharren also shared a deeply personal story, the attack a few months ago, the anti-Semitic attack, against her grandmother in France. And what does that moment tell us about the growing threats Jews faces across the globe, from Paris to college campuses? Why is Israel losing the narrative war, and what can be done about it? And what's next for Israeli diplomacy? Don't miss this episode. Deputy Foreign Minister Sharren Haskel, it's great to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Yaakov, for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
So, there's a lot to talk about and a lot to unpack, and I want to get to a bunch of the specifics, what's happening in Gaza, obviously Iran. I saw you made some very strong comments on that just the other day, the recent IAEA report. But before that, it does seem to, I think, many Israelis and people around the world that the state of Israel is increasingly isolated on the world stage. I was reading just an article today about how, once again, at the Paris Air Show, will Israeli companies be able to present their technology there? Will they not? We all remember what happened last year, that originally they were banned and then they went to court and they were able to go. But this is just not we know Canada, France, United Kingdom, and other countries around the world are increasingly turning on Israel. So as our deputy foreign minister, how do you see this situation?
Look, we're in a war. An existential war, a war of defense, and a war that we didn't want it. And a war is the most violent form possible to resolve a dispute. Now, what is the dispute? The dispute of Hamas is that they want the complete annihilation of the state of Israel. Can we work in diplomatic manners to reach a point or a compromise in that? Maybe just 50% of annihilation? Absolutely not. We didn't want that war, and we did everything possible to try and avoid it because we understand what a grave tragedy it is. But unfortunately, Hamas has opened it, declared it, with the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. And we are now trying to resolve this dispute in the most violent way. Can I picture it pretty? There's going to be dead. It's going to be blood on both sides. It's heartbreaking. The images are heartbreaking. But we know the truth. The responsibility on this conflict, on this war, is on Hamas. And Hamas only. This war could have ended on the 8th of October. It took us more than 3 weeks to set operation to go into Gaza, and the Israeli government said very clearly to Hamas, bring us back more than 250 hostages that you are holding, that you've abducted from their beds, and disarm yourself, and not a single Israeli soldier will go in, because we truly understand what the meaning of war is. And ever since, until today, even 2 months ago, 2 days ago, and today, we say yes to the Witkoff proposal that will bring a ceasefire, but Hamas continues to refuse. So is it on Israel's hand? I mean, we can surrender and we can end up in another meeting like the 7th of October, maybe even worse than that. Or we can deal with a death cult that is obligated to the destruction of my people and the annihilation of our people, and meet them again in the battlefield in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. That's the meaning of surrendering, the continuation of building of military power, of sending those rockets into towns all around Israel, including Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Or we can finish this work now to get rid of this threat and to bring back our people home. I choose the second one because I understand that if we deal with this threat now, my daughters are going to be safer. I'm not saying it's 100% because we have very vile enemies. I mean, Hamas is just a symptom. The source, the tumor, the cancer is Iran, the IRGC, and the Muslim Brotherhood right now. The cancer is radical Islam, who is trying to fight not just the Jews, the Druze, the Alawites, the Christians all around the Middle East. But if we look in a microscope towards Israel, then we will get rid of the symptom right now, which is Hamas, and our country and our children are going to be safer. Now, they refuse to do it in civilized way, in a diplomatic way, and the only tool that we have left is by a war. How did ISIS was defeated? How the Nazis were defeated? It was a war. It wasn't pretty. I cannot sugarcoat it. And so you need to understand, to eliminate Hamas's power has two main aspects. The idea is an idea. The question is whether they're going to have tools to chase this idea or ideology. One is a military one, one is the civilian control. And through the military, we had many advancement. Unfortunately, to my opposition as well, in March, when we've resigned from the government, they stopped the operation and the maneuvering. I believe that if we would have continued, it would have taken probably a few months more, because our advancements was very strong, very fierce, but they chose to stop the entire operation and go into small raids, which was a mistake. I stated it in March when they went into it, and I continue to declare it here in the General Assembly to push them until quite a few months later when they've actually changed their position as well. The issue of the civilian control remained constantly because of international pressure. The international pressure refused to disconnect Hamas from the humanitarian aid distribution. No matter what we said, no matter how much proof we've supplied to them, we knew that Hamas is empowering themselves through civilian aid. And the international community, in particular the UN, turned it into a political issue. And they were very clearly on Hamas's side, including Guterres with all his declarations and his actions. And so it's only now that we were able to actually divert it with the support of the American President Trump, who really understood that in depth. And created an American, there's a new American Gaza humanitarian fund, who is completely disconnected from Hamas, who started its operation just recently in distribution of aid to Palestinians, and it bypassed Hamas. And you can see their panic already.
But I totally understand, and I'm with you on that. But I do think that there's two other aspects. One is, before we go into Gaza, and I do want to push back a bit on the two aspects of the war, because I agree with you. There's the military aspect, and there's also the civilian aspect, and there's also the day after aspect, which the government has not really articulated what it is, the plan that they want, and who will control Gaza the day after, and what will that entity look like. But I mean, these are our closest friends in the world, right? Canada, Britain, of course, the United States, and we're seeing, yes, some daylight, no daylight. I mean, what exactly is going on there is also a little unclear. Germany is already making sounds that they're changing a bit on us. I mean, what is it? You make a good argument, But why do they not understand what it is that Israel's, those choices that you described, right? How come they don't get it?
There's a few, I think there's a few of them. The first one is major international pressure, but not just pressure, but misinformation that is taken by the UN from Hamas's Ministry of Health and Hamas's agencies that completely distort the reality and the facts. And they take Hamas's word, meaning a terrorist organization that, don't care for Israelis, we know that, but doesn't care for the Palestinian lives either, distorting this information, and they're taking it as a given fact. And they're translating it into the United Nations organizations. And when the United Nations is putting a stamp on it, then they are taking it as a given fact. But the problem is that the international institutions have been politicized heavily. Now, we were talking before about the Muslim Brotherhood. We talked about Iran. There's many forces who are collaborating with them as well in the international level as well. And so that pressure is showing signs. Even though the information in many cases is inaccurate or even false completely. The second thing is the public pressure. And many of these countries had a massive wave of immigration from the Middle East. And that immigration from the Middle East, it has been educated back in their home of origin, in their education system, like Pakistan and Afghanistan and Syria, to an anti-Semitic and even jihadist education. Meaning it's not just about Israel. It's important to understand this is about the West and Western values in general. And Israel is the symbol of democracy, of liberty, of women's right, of freedom of religion. We're sort of an agent of those morals and values here in the Middle East. And that's what there is hated. And so when they go and they immigrate, whether it's to Canada or the UK and definitely France.
Or Boulder, Colorado, as an example.
Absolutely. They bring that baggage of radical Islamist education into their new place, educating their children to it, continue to watch Al Jazeera. And Al Jazeera is the mouthpiece for the Muslim Brotherhood, who's inciting and radicalizing the youth. And we've seen that. Even the Palestinian Authority prevented their broadcasting because they said they radicalized the youth. It's banned in other countries as well because it's an agent of the Muslim Brotherhood. So they actually become radicalized even further in those countries, not integrating in. And those voices, you see them marching in the streets in London and in Canada, and that is political pressure. All of those representatives need to be elected. And many of those voices that have changed rely on a small margin that is relying on that.
So I understand that, but do you not think also that potentially had Israel, right, said, okay, we're going back into Gaza now, we're escalating the ground offensive, which is what's happening, and there seem to be, from a military perspective, good results for the time being, but in terms of weakening and further degrading Hamas. But a lot of the critics would say the government hasn't said what they want to do. And so if you're able to attach to the military operation...
You mean the after?
Yeah, well, the political objective. What is it that we're working towards beyond just pressure on Hamas to release hostages and agree to the Witkoff proposal, which you said Israel has agreed to? What is it that we're after? Maybe that would help to some extent with the world, is explaining to them this is what the bigger picture is about.
So let's take the declared one. Our goals are very clear, and this is what we've defined legally as well as the objectives of war, which is disarming Hamas and the releasing of the hostages, okay? Both of them are the military objective of this war. What it means right now is, we will go into a deal to release the hostages. We'll dismantle Hamas's civilian power and we'll dismantle Hamas's military power. That's what the IDF is doing there right now. Is it pretty? No. It's a war. It's violent. On the other hand, we're talking about what's going to happen the day after. And the main problem is that almost any solution, not solution, but even just ideas that were thrown into the air, that were suggested, and it was published, were completely shut down by anyone who reached it. Because it is so politically charged, the situation here in Israel, more than any other conflict in the world, I think, and I understand the government who is working in quiet channels about what the capability and what are the possibilities for the day after. Prime Minister Netanyahu just a few weeks ago said, for now, the security will need to be in Israeli hands to make sure that no other terrorist organization after Hamas will take over and will commit crimes against humanity against the Israeli people. But in civilian kind of way, there's many suggestions. The person in charge of working on that is Ron Dermer. He's working with a few counterparts, okay? And it is in quiet channels so that we can try and build something. It's not just Israel's choice, but it's other countries' cooperation and decision that needs to be joined to that needs to be collaborated together, because we don't want to manage it civilianly, and we need to understand what kind of mechanism can be there that will guard the safety and the security of our people, that maybe one day will be able to live side by side. And so, there were some proposition, and Trump was suggesting a few of them in recent months as well. And, I hear the media and people starting to make fun and are saying jokes about it, but there's two facts about it. The one thing is that Trump already showed and proven in actions, not just words, that things that were unimaginable, that everybody told him are impossible, that the media laughed about, like the Abraham Accord, were in fact a possibility. Incredible possibility. And the other thing is that it has finally created a discussion about the day after, not just with Israel, not just bringing outside.
But also the Arab countries. Right.
Exactly. For the first time since he declared it, that pushed the Arab countries to start that conversation where they actually refused to do that. And so, I welcome that. I think it should be kept in quiet channels until we have something stronger built with a strategy, with experts that have actually thought through it.
Well, I think also a point that I've seen you make in other interviews is what a lot of people, I think, fail to recognize is that if Hamas is not defeated and if Hamas does not lose and is not gone, then this will not end. And I think that that's something that too many people refuse to recognize or remember.
I completely agree. This will happen in a year, 5 years, 10 years, and over again. There's another thing that they don't recognize and don't understand, and that's, you're talking about the international pressure. France, aggressive push towards a recognition of a Palestinian state. Really not understanding the reality here in the Middle East. If they, it's not going to have any effect in the reality here. If anything, it was just going to push Israel. If they do one-sided steps, then it will just push Israel to do one-sided steps. What they will do will not change the reality. What we will do will change the reality. And what they lack are not understanding is that they think today they are giving a state or declaring a state for the Palestinian Authority. When was the last elections for the Palestinian Authority? 20 years ago? All the polls shows that if there's elections today in the areas of Judea and Samaria, Hamas will rise into power. So the fact is that they're declaring a Palestinian state for Hamas, which is National Day, will be the 7th of October. That's the reality. So in that regards, I think that, Trump's position and being focused more about the result and not about the process is extremely important in what is happening worldwide today. Not just in Israel, but in every single continent in regards to the takeover of the IRGC of Iran and of the Muslim Brotherhood and other radical organizations. First of all, I'll say it is an opportunity that because of Israel, it was created, but it's not just up to Israel, it's up to the entire international community to follow that. And that's why we are very careful on many of our declarations, because the result of a mistake of judgment in a decision, a diplomatic decision that we're actually making, the effect of that is going to be the death of my children, of your children. And so in this opportunity, you have to make sure that the surrounding is also prepared for that. Israel's been prepared for that for a long time, for years now, okay? The events on the 7th of October were partially in order to manipulate and to stop the process of the normalization with the Saudis, because that would have created stability in the Middle East, and that is Iran's greatest enemy, stability. So in this process, when you're looking in, you need to make sure that it's not going to turn back on you. So, for example, the opportunity in Lebanon. It's not just an opportunity for Israel. The first thing, it's an opportunity for the Lebanese people to shut out and to kick out the Iranian regime who's been occupying and controlling the countries for years now, destroying their economy, their politics, their social fabric, everything. If they cannot kick Iran out by themselves, not with Israel's help, I mean, we did most of the work in terms of weakening them in Lebanon. Right now, it's up to them. It's whether they take it or leave it. And it means that they need to strengthen themselves up. It means the international community needs to back them. It means that they need to start enforcing Hezbollah and other militant groups in Lebanon, disarming them, taking over, stopping shipment of millions of dollars who are being transferred through their airport right now, and not just stop them, but confiscate the money, the Iranian money that's coming in to rehabilitate Hezbollah. Because right now they're coming and they're saying, hold on, this is our money, give it back to us. Are they going to give it to Hezbollah, or are they going to confiscate it? So we need to see that they're actually confiscating a lot of the money that's coming from Iran through Beirut's airport. But it's not just about stopping the shipment. It's actually confiscating it, bringing it in, for example, into the Lebanese treasury to rehabilitate a lot of what was destroyed by Hezbollah for the community. I don't think they're there yet. When we give out intelligence and information about Hezbollah militant or missiles that are directed towards Israel, go and destroy them as a sovereign country against an Iranian army who's trying to take over your power. They're still not doing it. Mm-hmm. We need to do it. And so, if Iran is capable of rebuilding back its power, taking over the military, the politics again, the economy, then there isn't a real opportunity there.
What do you think about Syria, though? Is that a different scenario? Because there does seem to be a lot of pressure on Israel. And you're the minister, Gideon Sa'ar, you're head of your party and the minister of foreign affairs, has been quite critical of al-Julani, Ahmed Ashara, the president.
Absolutely.
Right. So
he's a former ISIS. He's a former Al-Qaeda. These are terrorist organizations with radical views and radical ideology. Him and his people are people who created crime against humanity, against women. Would I trust those people? Let me see their actions first. Okay? I don't buy into the very beautiful European language that they've adopted. ISIS strength was very much on social media about recruiting even white Europeans to come and fight in their roles because of the social media and because of the great capabilities that they've had. So I say, wait until we see what's happening there. And when we see Alawites get butchered, Christian being robbed and looted, the Druze being massacred, the Kurdish people being abused by Turkey, I'm not sure yet where that's actually going. And I won't put the risk of my people in alleviating any of the pressure, because the first front line is going to be against Israel.
So I want to ask you about Iran. Obviously, we saw over the weekend the IAEA report that was leaked out and spoke about how they have quadrupled the amount of uranium enriched to 60%. They are over the last year. So while everyone's been trying to court them and get them into a deal, and while there's war has been going on, they're plowing ahead with their nuclear program.
Absolutely.
Can they still be stopped with a deal that does seem to be what the president of the United States is interested in at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. And I think his declaration was very clear yesterday, with zero enrichment on Iranian soil. And I think that can actually open a path if they'll be willing to accept it. Whether they'll accept it or not, I have doubts about it. We reserve the right to put anything on the table to protect our people. But we're looking on the process that President Trump is leading. And if there will be zero enrichment of uranium with enforcement and supervision towards that, I think that can open a pathway. Look, our goal is not a war. Our goal is to have a safe place where nuclear capabilities are not in the hands of a radical Islamist IRGC organization. We've seen the destruction that they've been doing in the Middle East and other continents. Try and imagine them with nuclear warheads. Can be destructive not just for Israel, but for the entire world. So if we'll be able to achieve that through diplomatic channels, I think that would be preferable.
Do you feel, though, Sharren, that the Trump administration is attentive to Israel's concerns? Because they're on the issue of enrichment, which you mentioned, for example, there were conflicting reports and statements even that were made, whether by Witkoff or Rubio, or press media reports that they would retain enrichment. And the president, of course, posted on his Truth Social website, his account, that there would be no enrichment. There was a New York Times article saying there would still be enrichment. Do you feel, I mean, you're talking to these people. Do you feel that the administration is listening to our concerns?
Yes, I think our teams were there. They're in close contact. The discussions are being done in closed door, as with friends there should. And I think Trump declared it very, very clear that the path should be zero enrichment of uranium on Iranian soil. I think Congress declared that as well, and all the other parties. I think the assumption in different publications, there's always conversations like that. But I think that, Trump is a man who stands up to his words. And that's the experience that we've had with him. So I'm very positive about it.
I want to let you go, but I want to ask just one other quick topic. On Sunday, the eve of Erev Shavuot, just before the holiday, there were reports that came out in the morning of some alleged massacre that took place at one of the Gaza humanitarian distribution sites that turned out to be false, turned out to have been made up. The entire international media was reporting this, unfortunately. We all know how lies and fabrications are spread and disseminated. You had mentioned before about how the UN and others just lap up the Gaza health ministry, so-called health ministry reports on casualties and more. But what I found interesting was that most of Israel was completely silent. The IDF spokesperson's office did not put out a statement until really, I think, 6:30 in the evening, when this happened early in the morning. You, on the other hand, to your credit, went on Sky News and spoke to Trevor Phillips and went into the hot seat and was willing to answer the questions where most Israelis were totally absent. And so personally, it drives me crazy, right? That's just personally. Where is everyone? So I was glad to see that you, which is your job, so you're doing what you're supposed to do, which is refreshing to see people do what they're supposed to do. But anyhow, why can't we get it right? I mean, there should have been 100 of you out there on all the different channels pushing back. Why did it take the army almost 12 hours to put out that statement?
So I want to talk about it in a few different aspects. First of all, I'm not the best speaker for Israel, but I know that I have capabilities with English, with French. I can say things clearly, and it's obviously it's easy. And as a former combat soldier in Magav, I'm not afraid to go into the ring and start a fist fight, and that's including in international media. Now, it's very difficult. It's very difficult because many of these outlets are, for me, completely lost their credibility because they literally broadcast anything that the Gaza Ministry of Health, which is Hamas Ministry of Health, is putting out. Now, during this week, it's been even more difficult because they are panicking over the distribution of the new humanitarian aid channel that we facilitate, because it actually takes their money and their power over the civilians. They're so panicking, and they're putting out statements constantly out. And the gullible media is just broadcasting everything immediately from the mouth of a terrorist organization without verifying the facts and checking them. Now, it's very frustrating for me. I'll go on. It's okay. And I'll say the truth. And the truth was that we need to investigate that. We need to check whether something like that happened or not. And I have to say that in most cases, and it's far more difficult to research and to identify and to reveal a lie than the truth.
Right.
It's a war. It's a war zone. There are millions of events in every single hour. To try and chase now a lie is to try and check in all of the fields with all the soldiers, all the units, if anyone in any area have done something that might even sound relatively similar. You need to process that information. You need to bring then this information to the spokesperson. Then they need to verify it and try and think to prove that that was a lie. I need everybody to be on board, that everybody told me it's not us, not us, not us, nothing happened here. It's a process that takes time, especially during a war. And especially with now reports, we had this issue. We found these terrorists. We were there and we found such and such. And so you look into every single case to see whether that actually sounds similar to what was reported by Hamas. That's why it takes longer. And that's why, to keep our integrity, we will not declare it's false or true before we had a deep investigation. If something actually happened, it's easier. Within 15 minutes, half an hour, the IDF can tell me, look, it actually happened this and this. These are the facts. And then I can be briefed about it and come out. So this is our reality. And this is also a reality in a place where no other war almost had to deal with, social media and the media, and everything's moving so fast and everything. And so, on this end, most of the problem is with unreliable sources and journalists who have lost their integrity completely and are okay with broadcasting breaking news who are straight from the mouth of a terrorist organization. This would be as if, CNN in America would broadcast every single thing that ISIS is claiming or saying without verifying it with the authorities. It's difficult. It's really difficult. Now, we have
you're right. No one would ever quote the Al-Qaeda or ISIS health ministry. That's for sure.
And so we have done many changes at the Foreign Ministry, and Gideon Saar is leading an incredible, plan now, strategic plan that we've built, which is very difficult in what and where we're working with. For example, monitoring the social media and monitoring media to be able to give answers directly and to address things that we see that are coming up. These are also people who can speak in different programs, not just from our government, but also from civilian organizations or just civilians who can speak well, who are aware of the facts, can be on shows. Unfortunately, and I'll tell you the truth, many of these programs, they don't want them. They don't want Elon Levy or Natasha Hausdorff or Noah Tishby because they don't want that voice to be sound on their program. That happens in many cases. And in many cases, they want, we want government official. And as much as it's difficult, I'm always there for the challenge. And so I had quite a few fistfights with Sky News, BBC, and other very aggressive and biased programs and channels. I'm not afraid of that because I know the truth is on our side. I know that we're the good guys.
No, I mean, first of all, keep doing it because it is, I mean, you don't need me to tell you, but it is super important. I'm going to let you go, but I really have one last thing that I have to touch on
Sure.
and a little more sobering, but it is a few months ago, you mentioned, you announced that your grandmother was assaulted on the streets of France, was wearing a Magen David and a Star of David necklace, and some attacker struck her in the face and yelled and cursed her with anti-Semitic slurs. We saw what happened in Paris over the weekend, synagogues, cemeteries, monuments for Jews, all vandalized. We, of course, saw what happened in Boulder, Colorado, at the March for Hostages. We saw what happened at the AJC event recently, where two staffers of the Israeli embassy in Washington. I mean, Jews around the world are not safe. And the state of Israel does see itself as responsible to some extent of what happens to Jews around the world. So I'm curious, as the Deputy Foreign Minister, what are you saying, not just to the Jews of the world and the diaspora, but also to the governments and the officials that you're meeting with? What are you demanding of them to do?
Wow. There's a lot, including writing article pieces in newspapers to try and raise awareness about it, and to the point of building up even more security to our communities, more channels of communications with the embassies of Israel in many other cases. But this wave of hatred towards the Jewish communities is massive and is something that we didn't think that we'll experience. It really reminds us of a very dark time. And it comes from a few sources. So we spoke about the radical voices of immigration that are coming in and anti-Semitism that is being normalized, which meet, on that's the extreme left, and then the extreme right with neo-Nazis who feel safe enough to raise their heads. And that process is happening also because the media feel comfortable with demonizing the state of Israel and Jews. Those fabrications, blood libels, demonization of the state of Israel, spreading lies, feeling comfortable with that, attaching it to the Jewish communities, have created this inflammation in hatred towards the Jews all around the world. As if, all Jews are baby killers, racist, colonialist, white, all these conspiracy theories. And, that's been around the world for many years, through generations. You give me a political problem and I'll tell you how it's connected to the Jews.
Right.
Or you kill them or expel them, that will be the solution. Whether they are the poorest and the leeches of the country and are leeching out from the resources and need to be expelled to their own country back, and poverties because of them, to the other extreme where the Jews are the richest in the world. They're controlling the banks. They're controlling the media. You tell me the problem and I'll tell you how it is the Jews. Whether it's the Jews who created communism or the Jews who are leading capitalism, you tell me the problem and I'll tell you how it's connected to the Jews. And it's the same case now. If only the Jews wouldn't exist, there wouldn't be any problems in the world. And that is really inflating with propagating a lot of the propaganda, anti-Semitic propaganda. Then it's joined government lack of enforcement of racism and hatred. Whether it's in the streets, chanting, death threat and violent slogans who are clearly illegal and criminal, like on the 8th of October, 3 weeks before Israel set operation in Gaza, people were chanting on the steps of the Opera House in Sydney to gas the Jews. What were they demonstrating for? Ceasefire? To end the war that didn't even start it? Or to support the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, and to call for that in Sydney as well? How much enforcement the cop stops that hate crime, anyone persecuted, prosecuted, charged? No, nothing.
Right.
That's the same in Canada. That's what happened in Europe. And so when people are not they're not enforcing the law, and other people are allowed to continue with criminal activities, then it becomes direct threats. Then it becomes looting. Then it becomes violent actions. And then it deteriorates to murder, to burning. And you have to put a strict line. And unfortunately, in France, there's been zero accountability.
Yeah.
It's not safe for Jews in France.
And your grandmother, how is she?
She's recovered, but I keep on telling my family there's no place for Jews in France anymore. Come home. Come to Israel.
Wow. Wow. On that note, Deputy Foreign Minister Sharren Haskel, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure, Yaakov.
Thanks for joining me on today's podcast. You can find us, as always, where podcasts can be found: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and the website of Times of Israel.